Thank you very much indeed. It is 2 minutes past 10. There will be, thank you. They're in the words of the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Social Club. Hello. I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Liberal Democrat councillor for Baffins, North Milton and South Cottonwood, and in this context the Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness. And welcome to our meeting today. So before I begin, I have some housekeeping advice to put forwards, which is if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust, in whose building we're in, fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Hello to everyone watching on the live web stream, and may I draw the attention of everyone here to the fact that that exists. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including this person who wants to call me, who will be dealt with later. Thank you. Sorry about that. So everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. I don't think there are any deputations here today, and are they good? Okay, thank you. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please, can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. Here endeth the housekeeping. So, for the benefit of those people watching and listening today, I'll just ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting on my far left with Anna.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Councillor George Magic of the Paulsgrove Ward in opposition for Portsmouth Independence Party.
Mered.
Meredith Hughes, Assistant Director in Housing, Neighbourhood and Buildings.
Excellent. Daniel. Hello.
Hiya. Councillor Daniel Weems, Hillsey Ward.
Thank you. Maria.
Maria Cole, representing the Residents' Consortium.
Now, at this stage, I'm going to get shot because I can't quite remember your name, madam, so therefore I will be shot later.
Sue Gordon.
Sue. I will know you as Sue after that,
Residents' Consortium.
after that fine David Bowie record. Cal.
Cal Corkery, Councillor for Charles Dickens Ward and Labour spokesperson for Housing.
Thank you very much. And there's a person on my right who I know as Josh, who is the News local democracy reporter. Are you still that? Excellent, that's fine. So he will be recording the meeting for posterity or something else. So does anyone? So the process is whether people have anything, any interest to declare, which covers George, me, Cal, and Daniel. So do any of the four of us have anything to declare? I don't. Young Cal.
A personal interest in that I'm a council tenant.
Yes, I'm not sure if your block where you live is on here. It might be, but no, I think Mered's avoided that. Okay, marvellous news. So we've only got one item on the agenda today, which I've asked to bring along, and so what I'll do is I'll ask Mered to introduce the item, and then we'll go through it from there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sanders. The report is for information only, and as you said, it's in response to a request from your good self at the Housing and Preventing Homelessness meeting held on the 22nd of March. And the report will update everyone here today on the progress of the capital projects on HRA properties that were approved as part of the budget back in March. Give you the latest position on the projects, the works that's committed, projects being evaluated, etc., the spend against those projects to the end of September, and also to perhaps outline some of the future pressures that are being faced within the construction industry, both nationally and some of the stuff that we're feeling locally as well, after conversations with Core Group and also with neighbouring housing associations who obviously deliver the same sort of service as we do. I think the key area in 5.1 is to highlight that as of the end of September, the building projects team were working on 42 capital projects. That was split as three projects have been already completed in the first 6 months of the year. There are further 19 projects on site, There were a further 3 projects were at tender stage, and I'm aware now that I think they've been returned from tender, and that a further 17 projects were being evaluated. And what we describe as evaluated as these are being worked up, so drawings are being prepared, specifications, on-site surveys are being done. And there are a further 11 projects which are still to be evaluated to a surveying resource when that becomes available. The value of projects that the team are working on is just over 39.4 million, and this is made up as follows. So value of works completed, either on site and or at tender, is 23.6 million, and the expenditure to date of those projects is just over £8.4 million. The value of projects being evaluated is a further £15.8 million. What we have seen this financial year is that we're receiving tenders back from contractors of between 20 and 25% higher than we were receiving pre-COVID, so that was 2019 and 2020. The team have been receiving tenders during the COVID, during the pandemic, during 2021. We do a lot of work for other services within the authority as well, and so we'd baked in those inflationary costs into the estimates back in March in terms of our project plans, etc. So the tenders that we're receiving are within the estimates and within the budgets that we've approved. But it's certainly something that we're monitoring, and obviously I'll talk about that pressures going forward. Within 5.3, we've got a couple of appendices, and they list the works, as I said, either on-site completed, tender stage, being evaluated, and you can see there's a significant value of works there, detailed description of the project. I think 2 things I'd like to highlight that come out on that list is that because of the scale and complexity of the work, a number of these projects will be approved for budget spend in this financial year, but will actually span 2 years and in some cases 3 years because of the scale of the works, etc. And the other thing to highlight as well is that back in March we will prepare our predicted programme of works, but as the work progresses there are in-year demands, and I'd highlight two projects which are on Appendix A and Appendix B, which are Grafton Street fire damage and Chedworth Crescent fire damage, 2 significant projects, nearly £500,000 worth of estimated works, and that's works resulting from 2 fires that occurred in those properties during the early part of this year. So that they're in-year pressures that have hit us as we've gone through the year. I think the other thing to highlight as well around the team is that I think I mentioned there's 43 pieces of work in progress at the moment on projects. In addition to that, the team are delivering 3 other key pieces of work for the HRA, and that's developing an asbestos framework, so that's creation of a consultant framework of undertaking asbestos surveys and samples, which will help us produce faster specifications and undertaking more surveys. We've got 2 asbestos surveyors in-house, which we employ ourselves, but we're looking at expanding that resource. We're also we're in the final stages developing a primary contractor void sublot. So that's creation of a separate sublot of contractors who are specifically charged with undertaking large-scale void work. So in a traditional format, Comserve and Mountjoy would undertake our void works. There's a significant amount of work at the moment around voids, and so we're looking at bringing additional resources in to manage that work and provide additional resources so we can turn over properties faster. And the other bit of work we've got, which is a key bit of work around the capital programme, is the retrofit pilot project. So we've appointed some consultants to support us on that, to undertake pilot studies at 19 sites, consisting of 23 blocks of flats and 19 houses, and that's to assess the cost and viability of undertaking whole property retrofit works to houses and properties. That's reducing energy demand and also reducing carbon emissions. So that's another key piece of work that we're driving on. So that really covers off the capital programme and the programme of works that were agreed in March, and the update on that area. I think the other bit that I know that you were keen to for us to talk to you back in March, Councillor Sanders, and that was perhaps the changing dynamic and horizon around building inflationary costs, etc. I've mentioned that we're actually experiencing tender costs between 20-25% higher than pre-COVID. Certainly, the building professionals, the RICS, Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, RBA, Royal Institution of Building Architects, they're predicting a further increase of between 10 and 15% into 2023, and that's reflected in the BCIS all tender index, which is actually predicting a 13% increase in the 12 months between first quarter 22 and first quarter 23, and those costs are pinned to get things like Brexit, still the huge demand of building works coming out of COVID, the effects of the Ukraine-Russian war, cost of living prices, where we've got incredibly high prices around gas, electricity, but also fuel prices have hit record levels this year as well. So that's what's being predicted for next year, and we'll be utilising those inflationary increases in estimating our costs for next year's works when we bring the capital programme for your approval next March. I think the other things to highlight that the RSS are reporting is that prices of materials continue to move upwards, with fuel and energy prices having the largest impact. So I think that what that really means is that materials which obviously will require high levels of heat, fire, etc. to make them. So talking about iron and steel, ceramics, so bricks, vitreous china, so WCs, etc. Because of the increased costs of utilities, that those products are becoming more expensive, and also the availability of them, the demand for them is certainly increases, and we're seeing issues with that. And a lot of those materials will come from Europe, so Spain, Italy produce a lot of the building materials for the UK market, and certainly we're experiencing long delays in lead-in periods for materials. We're also seeing and talking to contractors that contractors are becoming very risk averse at the moment, so becoming very choosy about the types of work they're tendering for, and the length of tender periods as well. So within a majority of contracts we let will be fixed term price, so a contractor will say that he will deliver a project for a particular price, but that project may last for a 12-month, 18-month period, etc. And contractors are becoming, more risk-averse in terms of trying to hold prices for that period of time. So there's a number of things we're looking at in terms of whether we can work closer with contractors in terms of the early stages of design. So getting feedback from them in terms of what other specification materials could be used, what are available. Also looking at perhaps longer tender periods, but also longer contract periods, so we can take into account things like the long lead-in periods for bricks and steelwork, etc. But also the effect, COVID is still with us and affects building operatives as well as everyday men, women and children, etc. And so we do experience problems and delays on site with the availability of labour as well. And certainly for the first time in a long time, probably 20 years in my working experience, is that we may be looking at certainly longer contracts where there are fluctuation clauses within those contracts. So there may be perhaps a price increase within the tender period, within the contract period, so that would take up any inflationary costs that hit the contract during the build process. I think the other thing that we've done, we'll obviously continue to monitor that and feedback in due course around that. I'll take that into account when we look at our costs and prices for next year, and also perhaps what our procurement strategy might be around some of the large projects moving forward as well. I think the other thing to follow up on as well is that part of our contractual arrangements with our core group of contractors, we hold regular strategic meetings with them. Our last meeting was just before the end of September, and some of the key things that were coming out from that was that although the attrition run rate has reduced in the amount of staff that they're losing to other organisations, we're still struggling to recruit and retain existing staff. And that's despite all the service providers making changes to their terms and conditions to their staff, and also that all of our service providers pay the living wage as well to their staff as well. So what we found is that there are neighbouring landlords and organisations that are paying significantly more for short periods of work and project work, which are having quite an effect on the industry in terms of pulling people away from from our other organisations. We are seeing the other thing we are seeing though, and it's perhaps early days and it's something to monitor perhaps the rest of this year and certainly as we go up to the end of March, is that due to the cost of living crisis and the lack of perhaps disposable cash in people's bank accounts, etc., their willingness to perhaps undertake what I'd call is like home DIY projects, so extensions and perhaps double glazing, improvements to their own properties, which we saw a huge peak during the pandemic, is certainly starting to slow, and as we see that, we're hopeful that perhaps more subcontractors and smaller contractors will return into the marketplace, and will increase the resource available to perhaps larger contractors that we work with. I think the other thing I mentioned around the sporadic and difficulty about getting firm delivery dates. I think the other thing is that to mention as well is that we have a quarterly meeting with our colleagues in housing associations, speak to my opposite numbers in those organisations. We had a meeting at the beginning of October, and although a couple of them have their own in-house problem, they're facing exactly the same problems as us in terms of problems with paying, attracting staff, retaining staff, but also with issues around deliveries, materials, etc. And it's something that as a collective we're keeping a close eye in terms of how we can perhaps share a greater range of contractors, but also looking at perhaps sharing the sourcing of materials, etc., and standardisation of materials across the piece. And it's early stages in those conversations, but I think it's something that obviously I'll feed back to this forum in terms of that work going forward. And I think that concludes my report, Councillor Sanders.
That's fine, Maria. Thank you very much for that honest assessment. Before I go to anybody's comments, just the reason this is here. Oh, Lord. So, apologies for this. My apologies for that. Normally you're supposed to turn off your phones and I didn't, so therefore I'm for the naughty step later on. The reason this is here is because, although I've called it, is because I think all of the political spokespeople wanted to know exactly where we were going with in terms of various projects within the year, as opposed to just wait until the next year turns up. And I think in the current climate that's been very, very helpful. I think it's also useful for our residents, tenants and leaseholders to know what's going on. And also be aware of the situation, be as open as possible with our tenants, leaseholders and the rest of the city, if that doesn't sound too pompous. So thank you for that, Maria. I shall reserve my comments for last. Maria, do you have any questions or comments?
Just one small comment, Mary. I think most people would be aware that what problems they've got financially with cost of living and energy, the council will have the same. Can I just ask then that if somebody is expecting something to be done, like let's just say fire doors in a block, and they're told they're going to be done in January. If for any reason they can't be done in January, they have to be extended because of whatever happens, can they be told? Because when things don't happen when residents expect, they get disgruntled with the council, and if it carries on and there's no explanation, they then become disappointed, upset, and the satisfaction levels drop dramatically.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. It's something that we are experiencing about delays and to projects, etc. I know I've spoken to Councillor Corkery recently about a project that's within his ward, and he, asking for regular updates because projects do take a long time to come to site. do take a long time to finish in some, because of the scale of them, etc. But regular communication with residents and ward councillors certainly won't harm communication and also keeping people informed. So thank you for the excellent point, well made, and it's something that we are taking on board already. So thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Maria. Sue. Sue, please switch your microphone on. It's for the benefits of the... That's okay, don't worry. Most politicians don't know how to do it, so you're perfectly fine. It's just to benefit any deaf people.
As Cal mentioned, in our ward, there is a big project on the go, and is that money going to spread thinly enough so everybody gets the same? I think I've already heard some people saying, you know, where they seem to be doing a lot on one block, and are they going to be able to do all those things on another block, or is the money going to run out?
Without going into the individuals of specific projects and specific blocks, I think Sue's point is a very, very fair one. People are obviously scared, going, "Oh God, no one can afford this."
Yeah. So I think you're talking about the courts. Yeah. So the courts block is baked in to the programme, Sue, and we'll continue to deliver that.
Right. Sorry, Miranda. What is baked in English?
So sorry, it's actually part of the programme. We've signed a contract with a contractor. The money is allocated and earmarked for that project. So, but the project is a long project and will last into, I think, the beginning of 2024 because of the scale of it, because of the number of blocks we're trying to work on.
So with the project Sue relates to, the money is not going to run out,
no,
is it?
No, as I said, the money's been committed against that project.
That's fine. Thank you for that comment. It's
Thank
really,
you.
really important. Thank you. Sorry for that. Dan.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've got several questions, and it mainly reflects the fluctuation clauses that you mentioned. I understand, obviously, that PCC is operating within a really difficult economic climate. I just wanted to know how PCC will ensure value for money for people, because the only thing I'm worried about with the fluctuation clause is what stops the developer from kind of anticipating the higher inflation, but then using it as an excuse to charge more. So let's say they say 10% is baked into this fluctuation clause. What stops them from claiming the whole 10%, even if inflation is at 4, 5, 6, 7%?
Yeah, so the fluctuation clause is something that we would consider. So it's not agreed in any way. All of the contracts that we run on the capital programme are fixed price contracts. So a contractor will tender and say, I will do that piece of work for that fixed sum. It may fluctuate during the course of the works due to additional works being added or works being taken out. So it can go up and down. To ensure we have value for money on projects, all our projects are tendered. So we go out to the marketplace and we seek a minimum of 3 competitive tenders for all work. And likewise, if we do need to add some work in or take work out, the work will be valued by a chartered building surveyor or quantity surveyor who's got access to the marketplace in terms of what things cost, etc., etc. So the City Council will only sign that off if we're happy with those costs. So there is a very strict protocol and criteria in terms of managing costs on contract. And so, you know, the contractor may say, oh, I'm experiencing these additional costs, but they would have to be substantiated, they would have to be real costs, etc. And then we would have to sign that off and approve that before any monies were paid. So you know, I would assure you, Councillor, that there is a strict way of ensuring that the City Council gets value for money on all our works.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really useful to know. And I was just wondering about one more. How is PCC making sure that they're able to retain staff? Because obviously it's a very difficult climate at the moment. So most organisations and businesses will obviously go for the one that pays the most. So I'm just trying to work out how PCC are able to retain contractors for any future project. I understand that maybe Vivid pay more or some other organisations. So I'm just wondering what PCC are doing to anticipate this.
Okay, so in terms of contractors, we've set up a number of frameworks. So contractors can see there's a foot, and we're quite transparent in the amount of work that we're intending to deliver through frameworks, etc. And so contractors can see that they've got a fair chance at keeping work. Certainly on the capital works. On our responsive repairs, where we work with Comserve, Liberty and Mountjoy, we've got cost reimbursable contracts. So we pay the cost that the contractors incur, but again making sure we're getting value for money, competitive pricing, etc., etc. There's a lot of work done at the beginning of the year with the service providers around their pay conditions for their staff. So holiday and sick pay were looked at. As I said to Councillor Sanders, all of the service providers pay the minimum living wage. We do experience issues where staff will go to maybe perhaps to other organisations, but we're seeing that attrition rate, for want of a better word, reducing, and the contractors are being thinking outside the box in terms of perhaps some golden handcuffs, or you stay for us with the 12 months and you receive another bonus payment, those sorts of things. So that's on the contractors. For my own staff, so my technical staff, my surveyors, my architects, my engineers, etc. So one of the things that we certainly articulate the benefits of working for the local authority. So we have some really good training schemes at the authority. So we've got a number of, I think we're 18 or 19 apprentices working through our organisation. So we offer really first-class training for young people to come through, where they go to the university and pick up qualifications, but also are working on the job working. And just yesterday, my first architectural apprentice passed the final exam. So after a 3-year period of time, joined us. So that was really good. So we're growing our own staff. So taking staff from either school leavers or university leavers or people wanting to change career, we're doing that. But also we reinforce the benefits of working with the local authority in terms of the good pension for working with the flexible working time, the working hours, but also certainly within the built environment that I look after, the work is very exciting. So one day you could be working on a school, you could be working on people's homes and making a real difference to residents, etc. You could be working on ancient monuments like Sassy Castle, you could be working on the Spinnaker Tower, Guildhall, etc. So there's quite a varied raft of work that we can offer as well. So it's an exciting place to work. I've worked for the local authority for over 30 years because of those very reasons. So we don't rest on laurels, and we're continually reinforcing that and making sure that we have opportunities for everybody. So I'm very keen to get more females into the organisation, so more female surveyors, architects, etc. So showcasing the work that we do to make sure that we can attract good contractors and good staff as well, and retain those as well.
Thank you for that. You touched on growing a workforce in-house, which I think is brilliant. That's so useful. Just about how you retain that work staff there. Do you do a return of service for those who, let's say, they've been with the council since school leave age, and then they do their university, and then do they have to do maybe a year or two after they've completed it?
There's parts of their conditions of contracts. There's if you're on those sorts of contracts, there are say golden handcuffs, etc. So if you do qualify, you have to stay for a period of time.
Okay, PCC are doing that as well. I would just hate for you to put all the effort in and then obviously leave for another organisation.
And the authority does that across the piece as well.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Daniel. I know you very kindly offered to put several questions to me at the last council meeting. This is the one that we never got to, which is the state of the budget. But I hope this offers some of the backup evidence to some of my own thinking on this.
Yeah, the briefing we did a couple of weeks ago was really useful as well.
Yeah, the true horror show. But then again, I suppose there's a few horror shows knocking around when it comes to construction. Cal.
Thanks, Darren, and thanks for the report, Meredith. Firstly, just me to understand kind of how this issue is being managed going forwards, given the kind of significant increases in projected costs. Are there projects that were planned that are, as a result, going to be kind of pushed out into future financial years, or are we going to kind of expand the spending within what's already planned, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so for this year, The budget covers the project work that we've allowed for. Moving forward, we may have to we're working closely with Wayne Layton and his colleagues in terms of the available HRA budget through rents, etc., to ensure that we can deliver the work that we need to do against the demands that we're coming through on our projects. At the moment, we're formulating the plan of works for next year, and I know that Wayne and the team are putting together then the modelling of the income that's likely to happen, and our programme will have to reflect the type of work that we've the monies that are available going forward.
Okay, thank you. And just following up on that, so the projects that are listed in Appendix A,
yeah.
so I guess, and Appendix B, are they all currently funded?
Yes.
Or, because I guess some of them that are evaluation stage, for example, presumably the costs aren't baked in, as you say, so there's a little bit of uncertainty. Are they potentially going to be pushed out into future years, or would they kind of be subject to review?
So all the projects on Appendix A, Cal, looking all the way down those, so everything down to probably Marilyn Avenue, which is on site, all of those costs have been tendered and contracts signed, etc. So all that work is and the budget is committed against those. The acquired at Buckland, Louis Flag and Horndean, the quad. I think the quad is probably still at a tender because it's quite a large. You see, it's quite a large project. But the budget for that was part of the 2022-23 approval. So that money's set aside for that project already, and that's the estimated value of the work. Obviously, if that comes in, we might need to look at some of the projects on the other side if we need to flex some of the money from those other projects.
Okay, that's useful to know.
Yeah.
I had, interestingly, a query from a resident last week in the quads with a similar kind of issue that Sue raised around. They were wondering what was going to happen because they know that costs are increasing so much.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that their block isn't going to get done or is going to get pushed into the future.
No, the programme that we presented, it was March, wasn't it? Set out and the quad was in there. What we've also done is the point perhaps I made it slightly clumsy around work perhaps spanning 2 or 3 years. So we would have had approval for budgets last year and the year before, where I think we received approval for the quad as well. So there's almost like there's a bank of money set aside for projects, and there's also a reserve which we've set aside to make sure that these projects can be paid for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Last question, and I may have a follow-up point to make. Obviously, the government is consulting on capping social housing rent increases. Do we have any idea, or can we kind of speculate what the potential impact of that might be on future maintenance and improvement programmes?
No. Here's the short answer. Sorry, that's a blunt and straight answer. Simply, it is a consultation. The consultation at the moment is offering a range of rent increases. So they're consulting, I think, on 3%, 5% and 7%. Their preferred option is around 5%, which is where I think you and I, Cal, suspect benefits might be going up if we're not careful. So that's that. But at the moment, that's up in the air. There's a whole raft of other things that are up in the air, not least the costs of borrowing, which go up and down on a daily basis. The role of local government and what money local government will be getting, we won't know that probably until the 17th of November now. So there's a lot of variables in the air. But the short answer is no. But I think for everyone else, it's just useful to get a bit of context of that. There's also the moral argument, which is that we could raise rents by 11.1%. And in a cost of living crisis, is that morally correct? I chose not to do that last year because I knew people's bills were going up. I've made it very clear with council officers that I want to do the same principles again. But I'm also conscious that, the government's rent cut of 2015 took about £8 or £9 million out of people's repair bills. And so that's frustrating. It's there, it's what we have to live with. I just wish that local councils were able to get on and do what they want for their residents rather than have the nanny state intervene.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. And I guess just following up on that point, I think we do need to obviously start thinking about this issue now. This is a decision that's going to be coming up in a not too distant future with inflation, as you say, at 11, 12, 13%. If the previous formula was used, then that could be massive rent increases for lots of people living in council housing who are already struggling to get by and experiencing the pressures of the cost of living crisis. I mean, it's something that I would be in favour of, and maybe this is an idea for us all to consider, is supporting a rent cap, maybe at the lower level, but only kind of making that conditional on additional government funding being provided to local authorities and other social landlords to make up that gap, so that there isn't a hole in finances, but residents still aren't being hit with quite massive rent increases.
Again, if Meredith's okay, I'll answer this. I think that's actually formed a part of our response already. I mean, I'm very keen to get as much government money as possible. We as the administration have been very good, actually, at getting government money across the piece over the last few years. But it's only fair. We can't yet again, and this has happened under Conservative on their own, Labour on their own, Conservative, Liberal Democrat governments. Local government has been seen as the whipping boy or girl for funding cuts. When in fact it's one of the most efficient parts, regardless, and there are Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, independent councils across the country that are very, very good. And we shouldn't be the whipping boy, we should have the freedom. But yes, you're right about the morals of this. It's the principles I adopted last year and I intend to adopt this year. Personally, I'd have a rent freeze or a rent cut, but then I look at the budget and go, that cannot happen because of construction costs. And so we have to be realistic, we've got to balance these two things. But no, it's a fair point, Cal. Mered, you sounded far too keen to intervene on that one, I'm telling you. Is that all right? Was that it, Cal? Apologies for sort of me getting in there as opposed to Mered, but that's
problem.
fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. George.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, for myself, it's just really confirmation in relation to the finances. So, for the example, I'll just pick this one up because it's in my ward on Appendix B. You've got the Chedworth Crescent fire, which obviously was a significantly bad situation in our ward, which affected obviously a few social tenants and private tenants. But this £200,000, for example, the budget estimate was something that we didn't account for, needless to say, ahead of time because we didn't know it was coming. But are we insured for this type of thing? So is this £200,000 a budget estimate that's expected to come from, you know, the taxpayers' pockets, or is it something that we're insured for that we can claim back from an insurance company, so it's not costing us?
So it won't be from the taxpayer, Council Madgwick. It'll be council it's council rents. Sorry, and that's it's a difference between the general fund and HRA. Apologies for that. But we obviously are in touch with our insurance within our own organisation. The issue we have is that the City Council holds so many properties that the insurance liability to insure all of our properties, the premiums would be tens of £1 million a year. And so, although there is insurance across properties for particular reasons and causes, etc., this would have to be funded out of the HRA.
So obviously, if we as the cabinet hasn't budgeted for these things, is this something that we're going to be? I guess it's a question for Darren. Is this something that we're going to be looking at to include in the following budget? Is there going to have to be? I mean, with 20% price increases and the potential 15% in the next year, is this something we're going to be expected to vote on in full council when the budget season comes up to allow for these type of unexpected overheads? Because they are unexpected, we didn't predict it, but, you know.
Yeah, and I think the inevitability, I mean, Mered will comment a bit more. I think that in strategic terms, most of it is no, because it will come through here, because of the way that the housing revenue account is structured. All council colleagues will see it as part of the wider capital budget that is then put forwards, but the actual numbers are decided here, so the four of us will have a look at the stuff nearer the time, but ultimately it's me. So you're asking me. Any landlord has to work on the basis that stuff will happen. I mean, we've had a few fires there at Grafton Street. We've had to deal with one at Whale Island Way, which, although it was a private house, affects a council house. We've had one in your ward as well. So we do have to budget for those things, and you're right to sort of go there. We do have a reserve, which thanks to prudent budgeting is significant. But we can't keep calling on that. But yes, no, you have to set aside a contingency fund for stuff happening. And that's where a lot of the money, for instance, for COVID, we've been able to provide many more services across the council because of our prudent budgeting. We've been able to deliver extra money for COVID. But it's a very fair point. Mairead, you'll no doubt contradict me, which is fine.
No, I'll reinforce what you said, Councillor Sanders. So I think I haven't got the figure to hand actually, but I'll just check it's not in the report. But back in March, you approved a capital programme budget for this year, 35.4 million quid, 35 million pounds. The projects that we've got on site, Appendix A, Appendix B, I think comes to 38 million pounds. But as you said, we've got a significant reserve, which we've built up over time, where projects have taken longer to come to fruition. Perhaps projects when we've reevaluated them or we've tendered them, they've come in under budget, etc. So there is money to finance this work here. The other thing we do is that we allow a contingency within our programme for unforeseens, because the very nature of having 15,000 council houses, we know something will occur during the year, whether it be a fire, whether it be some subsidence, we don't know, whether it's a gas explosion, we know something will happen. So we do keep a contingency within that 35 million pounds. So the projects that you see listed on Appendix A and B are within the capital programme that's already been approved.
And just on hopefully a more positive note, because everything seems to be doom and gloom nowadays with the costs and everything like that. Have we got anything positive on the horizon coming up in relation to costs, or is it literally or is it literally just full doom and gloom every time we're here? I mean, come on, give me a positive. There's got to be something coming up on the horizon.
Well, the positive I heard last night, and I haven't spoken to my guys in the energy team, but by all accounts, the wholesale price of gas has started to drop this week. So we'll see if it's more than just a bright shining star for a couple of days or something. But if the price of gas can start to come down significantly, and it indicated it was coming down, that will have a massive knock-on effect on the cost of electricity, cost of building materials, etc., etc. I think the problem we have got is that there is a massive worldwide demand, not just the UK, not just Europe, massive worldwide demand for construction, and so there's huge demands on materials, quite a small capacity base from China, Europe, etc., delivering that, and I think it's going to run for a bit longer yet, to be perfectly frank. Yeah.
At least that's a glimmer of hope on gas then. No,
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. No further questions. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, George. When I said honest, I really meant honest. I think that's very helpful. Firstly, thanks to everyone for their comments. I think, Mairead, that's been incredibly helpful, because I think it's useful just to actually talk about some of the issues that we face as an authority, and I'm going to make some... the only real question I had was around the retention of staff, strangely, Daniel, which was how on earth are we going to do it and keep it? I mean, Cal and I sit on the employment committee for our sins, and we've seen the difficulties that exist within the social care model, for instance, whereby, people's care is being given back because it's £12.50 at Aldi an hour, and people are going there for sacking shelves. And it's a real issue across the whole authority, Daniel, and across, as you know, across councils across the country. So yeah, you're right. So I'm also very interested to know how we can do it. If that means working more constructively with other housing associations, I'm very good. I think in terms of George, the first thing I want to say was about Maria's point about being straight with people. I mean, for other colleagues, the team know that I insist that people are straight with everyone. Because as you said, Maria, if you say you're going to do something in October and you do it in September, everybody's happy. If you do something in September and it happens in November, everybody's very angry. So if somebody says they're going to do something, they do it. And that has been made very clear, Maria, by me, to the entire team, even if it means saying it's going to take 5 years. because then that's just the important thing, is to be straight, and that's one of the reasons why this report is here, frankly. It is to be straight with people. Dan, I totally agree about retention. I mean, I think it's one of the biggest of things we have as a council as a whole, and I think you're right, we do have to be more creative about it. And I think that's one of the issues that we all have to face going forwards, and that will mean some politicians talk about difficult decisions as if it's a euphemism for, stuff people don't like. But actually it is going to be difficult because we need to find a way out of this. And I think we're working towards a way out of this. Cal and Sue make very good points around projects, because ultimately people are just interested in, their stuff's being done. I mean, to give George a vague glimmer of hope, prudent budgeting has meant that we've been able to secure as many of the projects that we've had in what has been a rubbish last 9 months in terms of budgeting and project planning. What with Putin's illegal war in Ukraine, the resultant issues around the crisis on gas, and government mistakes, they have all contributed to chaos, frankly. So I'm delighted that prudent budgeting has meant that we've been insulated until now, which is your point, Sue, which is going forwards, we're going to have to take decisions. And a lot of it is up in the air. We don't know what the impact of the 17th of November autumn statement will be. We don't know what the rent cap will be. All those issues are really, really important in terms of budgeting going forwards, and they will affect how many blocks we can do. Being blunt. But up till now, prudent budgeting under this administration has meant we've been able to secure as many projects as we have, because we've just planned ahead, including the contingencies that have been raised. But frankly, the future is, how long is a piece of string? I mean, last night I was told the government would be borrowing £10 billion less than it thought it would, by delaying a statement by 3 weeks, which is always very helpful, because that will benefit everybody. I think within this, to offer further glimmers of hope to cheer George up, I think that there are some things in here which are actually very, very good and reflect our priorities. The first is to make sure tenants stay safe, which is why the sprinklers that we brought in will continue, because we have to make sure our tenants are safe. And then also I'm particularly impressed with the stuff around high-rise void flats. When we came in as Liberal Democrats, our view was too many council homes were too empty for too long. Since then, we've brought that down by a quarter. This will continue to do that, because we need to make sure that people have homes. So I think within we face basically financial chaos, and that really screws planning. We want to try and make sure we get as much money from government as possible to make sure that our tenants and leaseholders don't feel pain as a result of things that are way out of their control. And that's why we want more government money to happen. We're also continuing to build homes. We're also continuing to buy back homes, because that's important as well to try and reduce the problems. Maretta, I'm going to say thank you for what occasionally has felt like doom, gloom and a dark tunnel. But unfortunately at times we face a doom, gloom and a dark tunnel, and we don't do fairy tales here. So I'm very grateful to you for that, Maretta. If any colleagues have any particular issues, please feel free to raise them. But as far as I can see, that report noted. And then I think probably as part of the March meeting, then we come back with any further issues and any further updates.
Yeah, it's my intention to when I bring the capital programme at the end of March, Councillor Sanders, is to, as I did I think the first time this March, is update in terms of the projects completed, the number of properties we've worked on, the amount of money that's been spent, etc. And perhaps another 6 months will give us a bit of hopefully some more positive visibility of what might be happening further down the road as well in terms of building works.
Thank you, Maretta. I hope it's a bit quicker than 6 months, but anyway. So, colleagues, thank you very much indeed for taking the time out this morning. Anna, I'm going to close the meeting at 10:49 a.m.